Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
Welcome to the 2024 College Football Team Autopsy Report. An autopsy report is a document that summarizes the findings of an autopsy, an examination of a body after death. It includes details of the examination, tests, and observations performed, as well as the cause and manner of death. Just like a real autopsy report, the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network College Football Autopsy Report examines a team's body of work after the season has concluded. This report includes a review of the team's season win total and whether they met expectations, key offensive, defensive, and special teams metrics that shaped the season, a deep dive into coaching decisions, including situational play and fourth down aggressiveness, a final season grade, evaluating execution, performance in key moments, and consistency, the final verdict, analyzing what went right, what went wrong, and what must be fixed for 2025. With the 2024 season in the rearview mirror, it's time to examine the patient. To present the findings, we have called in our Chief Medical Examiner and Senior Analyst, Kenneth.
And welcome back to the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. This is the 2024 Team Autopsy Report for the Cal Golden Bears. And folks, I'm really excited to dig into this team from last year. Justin Wilcox, head coach there for the Cal Golden Bears. Let's just take a look at what he's done in his tenure as the head coach there in Berkeley. Just completed his 8th year. And this team in 92 games with him at the head coaching position, 42 wins, 50 losses, so a sub 500 record. Folks, this head coach has only had 2 winning seasons in his tenure as the head coach there at Cal. You want to know why this coach is on the hot seat? Take a look at his last four campaigns there. 5-7 in 2021, 4-8 in 2022. Made bowl games the last 2 years, but finished 6-6 in the regular season in both of those years, losing the Independence Bowl at the end of the 2023 season, losing the Louisiana Bowl this past season. So, Justin Wilcox, you are firmly on the hot seat this year, and you need to get this team off to a much better start early on in the season to maintain some momentum once you get into conference play. So let's dive in, as we always like to do with these team autopsy reports. If this is your first one, thank you for joining us. If you've been a loyal listener, also thank you as well. We're going to start there with the season betting total. We're going to go back to when these totals really became official back in June. This team had a season win total of 6.5. As we always like to say in the betting market, is that hook, that 0.5, will either kiss you or kill you. In this case, it would have definitely killed you if you took the over, because this team would have came up half a game short of meeting that expectations. When we look at this team from a win composite standpoint, we have three statistical numbers that go into giving us that composite win total for each team. We actually projected this team to almost be an 8-win team, 7.8. So for them to basically fall 2 full games short of that, that's going to lead me to diving into these numbers a little bit more critically, because usually we're not off by that much. So there must have been something that went wrong in some games to where Cal should have won those games but didn't. We'll see if we can identify those. All right, moving on. We talk about your strength of schedule. This is what you can control for the most part. Who is on your schedule? Did you schedule some quality opponents in the non-conference? And how does your in-conference schedule set up? Remember, not all of these conference schedules are made equally with the expanded conference due to realignment. So when we look at Cal, strength of schedule 0.296. This is 68th out of 134 teams. So if you want to kind of try to project that out, this was the absolutely weakest Power 4 schedule in college football, if you're just thinking about it that way. Not saying that they played this 68th toughest schedule, but when we kind of start thinking big picture, that's a way for us to kind of measure that and look at it. Okay, now your strength of record, something that we put a lot of value on. Basically, it's your opponent's win percentage. How well did your opponents do during their year? A winning percentage of 0.492, 99th out of 134 teams. So we're going to look at these opponents' win-loss records here for Cal in just a moment. We're going to find some data that's going to support that. So let's go ahead and move on to that, as we're going to take a look at what kind of offenses did Cal's defenses go up against last year. And before we do that, if you're watching on YouTube or streaming this on our Twitter feed, thank you for joining us. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, thank you as well. Let's just run down the opponent's win-loss record for Cal last year. We know the Auburn Tigers finished under 500 last year, going 5-7. San Diego State 3-9. Florida State 2-10. Miami was 10-2. Pitt was 7-5. NC State 6-6. Oregon State was 5-7. Wake was 4-8. Syracuse was 9-3. Stanford 3-9. SMU 11-1. So if you take out those three teams that got close to double digits last year, this Cal team did not face a lot of quality opponents. That's where that strength of record come into play. Now, I mentioned that this team had a composite win total of 8 for us, but only won 6 games. I think I just spotted the 2 games where they probably should have won, but didn't. And it came in back-to-back weeks. Actually, there are basically 3 games that were back-to-back weeks, starting with Miami, losing that game 38-39. There was a little bit of controversy at the end of that ball game. The following week against Pitt, lost that game 17-15. And against NC State, lost that game by 1 point, 24-23. Those, if you flip the score in any of those 3 contests, that gets you to the 8 wins. So as I like to say, there's always some statistical data that will always support our breakdowns of these teams. So that composite win total of almost 8 was on point. We saw some key blunders in 3 of those contests cost Cal a much better season than what they wound up having. Now let's move on to, we talk about using that baseline number of 68. 68 Power 4 teams when you include the major 4 conferences and Notre Dame. Let's take a look at how many of Cal's opponents' defenses rank inside of that 68. We're going to start right there with the Auburn Tigers, 39th best scoring defense in our metrics. Florida State was 51st. Pitt was 47th. Miami was 47th. Syracuse was 67th, and SMU was 31st. So 6 of their opponents were inside of that number. Now, let's flip it over. They faced 5 teams that were outside of the top 80 in scoring defense. You're talking about a San Diego State, an Oregon State outside of the top 100. NC State was 95th. Stanford was 90th. And Wake Forest was 86th. So this team faced a really soft schedule, did not take advantage of it. Average defensive power ranking for their opponents would have been 70th. So you're talking about a super high-end group of 5 ranking here for Cal. Did not take advantage of their schedule. And if I had to bullet point their offense, I'm going to get into their numbers here in just a moment. If I had to bullet point their offense, it would be inconsistent, but capable of being much better than what we saw. So points per game. This team averaged about 26.1 points per game, so about almost 2 points less than what the NCAA average was last year. But when we adjust for opponent, it goes down almost a field goal, down to 23.7. Their passing offense was their strong suit. This offense averaged 266 yards per game passing, which was about 40 yards better than the NCAA average of 227 yards passing per game. When we adjust for opponent, ticks down just a little bit to 254 passing yards per game, so about a 12-yard difference there. Rushing offense, while anemic on the surface, because the NCAA average is about 160 yards per game on the ground, this team was at 117. When we adjust for opponents, we get a lot closer to that NCAA average. We adjust them up to about 144 yards per game, so almost a 28-yard improvement there when we adjust for opponent. Total offense, they were right basically on the NCAA average of 387. They were at 383. When we adjust for opponents, we actually get them over that number, up to 398 yards per game in total offense. So about a 15-yard improvement there. Now, let's take a look at some really key metrics that I look at here. The NCAA average, what percentage of your team's drives end with a score, either a touchdown or a field goal? The average is about 40%. They were just slightly below that at 38.8%. What percentage of your drives end with a touchdown? NCAA average is about, let's call it 29%. They were at 21.5%, so significantly short in that area. And in third down conversions, the average was about 39% conversion rate on third down. They were at 38.8, so just a tick below that. This team did a poor job of protecting the quarterback as far as getting sacked last year. Average team last year during the regular season gave up about 23.5 sacks per game. This unit gave up 45 sacks. When you can't protect the quarterback, you're not going to be successful as an offense. And that really limits your ability to maintain possession of the ball and really extend drives out. We also now they did a great job of the turnovers. They only committed 10 turnovers last year. So that definitely kept them in a lot of ball games. When we talk about our 3 E's, how efficient, how explosive, and how effective was your team's offense last year? When we take a look at Cal, we have a lot of negative looking numbers here. Out of 134 teams, This was the 84th most effective offense in college football last year. You're now starting to talk about a middle of the pack group of 6 team with those kind of numbers. As far as being an explosive offense, this team was 94th. And as far as being an efficient offense, they were 79th. The Cal Golden Bears come in as our 86th ranked offense in 2024. Let's take a look at their defense to see if there's any improvements in that area. And if I had to bullet point this defense, I would say they had a bend but don't break mentality. So let's stick with that baseline of 68. How many of their opponents' offenses ranked inside of that top 68, if you will? The Auburn Tigers had the 56th best scoring offense in college football last year for us last year. Miami was the number 1 scoring offense. Pitt right on the edge of making that qualification with their ranking being 65th. NC State was 43rd. Syracuse was 20th, and SMU was 10th. So once again, 6 of their opponents were inside of that top 68, if you will. They also faced a lot of really bad offenses as well. They faced a San Diego State team that was the 130th scoring offense in our metrics last year. Once again, like I said, there's only 134 Division I teams. They also faced the Florida State offense that was ranked 119th in scoring, an Oregon State team that was 96th. So that is just a weak set of opponents' offenses. If you average out their opponents' offensive power ranking, we had them as the 64th. About 64th there. So, like I said, bend but don't break. Let's take a look at their numbers on the defensive side of the ball and see, did the defense really was failed by the offense. Points per game. This defense allowed just 22.2 points per game. When we adjust for opponent, that goes down to 21.7. So about a half a point per game improvement there. As far as their passing yards per game, 234 passing yards per game. When we adjust that for opponent, it goes down to about 202. So about 33 yards per game passing improvement when we adjust for opponents. The rush defense goes the opposite way. This defense on the surface gave up 107 yards per game on the ground. We adjust for opponent, that slightly goes up to about 132. So 25, a negative 25 differential there. Total offense, basically it's going to be a wash when you take the plus differential in passing to rushing defense. Total offense allowed 341 yards per game. We adjust that down to about 334 per game. Still far below the NCAA average of almost 370 yards per game. Now, drives ending with a score by their opponents. Remember I said 40% is the average last year. This defense was only allowing their opponents to end drives with either a touchdown or field goal 31% of the time. As far as drives ending with a touchdown, a much better number here as well than the NCAA average. Only 23.8% of their opponents' drives ended with a touchdown, well below the average of about 28%. And this team was phenomenal on third downs from a defensive standpoint, only allowing their opponents to convert 31.4% of the time on third downs. This team actually did a great job of getting after the opponent's quarterback, forcing 32 sacks last year. And as far as opponents converting on third downs, now I'm at fourth downs. Now, this was a problem area for Cal last year. Did not play great fourth down defense. Opponents went for it 33 times last year, converted 23 of them. That is a 70% conversion rate. NCAA average is about 53%. So this team could not get off the field on fourth downs despite playing great third down defense. That's problematic for me. This defense forced 22 turnovers last year. Let's take a look at the 3 E's. How effective, efficient, and explosive was your defense? This was the 23rd best defense as far as being effective against opponents' offense. That's fantastic. As far as not giving up a lot of explosive plays, they were ranked 32nd. And as far as being efficient, 37th. This was the 29th best defense overall in our metrics in 2024. So the defense played a lot of good quality football. Let's take a look at the coaching and special teams play here. Let's start right there with special teams. Strong punting, but poor field goal kicking. This team converted 22 out of 33 field goal attempts last year. That's just not going to get it done. As far as Justin Wilcox, their punting unit was actually phenomenal, averaging 45 yards per punt. That's inside of the top 20 in the FBS last year. And when I look at how aggressive was Justin Wilcox out of 144 qualifying Division I coaches last year, as far as being aggressive, going for it on fourth downs, he was 108 out of that 144. And for good reason. This team only converted 8 out of 20 fourth down attempts last year. That's a conversion rate of 40%. Average conversion rate is about 53%. So they were far below that. So it makes sense why he wasn't going for it on fourth down. One score games for Justin Wilcox last year, he was 2-5 in those contests against quality opponents, 1-3. This team had a discipline problem as well as force committing penalties, almost 8 penalties per game, looking at about 62 yards per game in penalties. I would say the hidden yardage, lost yardage because of some of those penalties, you're talking now well over 100 plus yards of lost opportunities, whether it's by your offense or giving to your opponent's offense. That's got to get better. All right, the next few minutes, let's take a look at how this offense looked in the games that they won versus when they lost. In those 6 wins, this offense was scoring almost 33 points per game, attempting about 37 pass attempts per game for 276 yards, 7.4 yards per pass attempt. This offense was not pushing the ball down the field at all. 10.6 yards per completion. Wide receivers weren't making a lot of explosive plays after the catch. 35 rushing attempts per game for about 130 yards per game. Rushing 3.7 yards per rushing attempt. Could not run the ball even in the games that they won. You're talking about a third down conversion rate in those wins of 48%, only committed 4 turnovers. That's how they won, not committing turnovers. In the 6 games that they lost, only 19 points per game. Still attempting 34 passing attempts per game, 256 yards per game passing, 7.7 yards per passing attempt, 12.1 yards per pass completion, 32 rushing attempts per game for about 104 yards per game, rushing only 3.3 yards per rushing attempt. This team just could not run the ball at all last year. Their third down conversions in those losses, 31%. And committed 6 turnovers. So the difference between this team when they won versus when they lost, about 14 points per game, so basically almost 2 touchdowns per difference, and just a little bit better passing for Cal last year. Let's take a look at the defense. In those 6 wins, they were allowing, let's call it 15 points per game. The opponents were throwing the ball for about 185 yards, 5.6 yards per attempt on those 33 passing attempts. 5.6 yards per attempt, 11.1 yards per completion. This defense was stout, only giving up 100 yards rushing per game in those wins, and they forced 16 turnovers. In those 6 losses, opponents were throwing the ball almost 100 yards more, almost 2 more yards per attempt, 7.6, 11.8 yards per completion. Opponents were converting about 37% on third downs, but only for 6 turnovers in those games. So in those losses, they were giving up about 13 more points. And really the biggest difference is the passing game. They were giving up almost 100 more yards passing per game. So what went wrong for Cal in 2025? This team struggled in the red zone. Inefficient running game, as I pointed out, and poor 4th down defense. Let's get to the final grade because this team really has an interesting final grade. The Cal Golden Bears will still get a passing grade of a B-. Why? Cal showed flashes of being a well-rounded team, but inefficiencies in critical moments prevented them from fully reaching their potential. I talked about it. 3 games to where this team could have absolutely gotten to the pay window. Shout out to Gordon Soley there, but failed to do so. Poor coaching decisions in those ball games, poor execution. So what does Cal need to do in 2025 to improve on that record? First and foremost, this team must develop a more balanced offensive attack. A below rushing attack is just not going to get it done. Need to find a tailback that can actually get it done. And it starts right there with that offensive line. Got to get much better offensive line play in 2025. Key number 2, late game execution. I talked about it. This team struggled in close game situations. Only 2 and 5 in 1-score games. Folks, they got to flip that around if they want to get back to being a much more competitive team in 2025. And protecting the quarterback, poor pass protection, 45 sacks allowed in 2025. And they're going to be doing that behind a new quarterback, as their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, started 11 games for them last year, completed about 69% of his passes, 16 touchdowns, 6 INTs. He's going to hit the transfer portal and be moving on. But if Cal can focus on these 3 keys in 2025, Cal can take a step forward and get back in bowl eligibility a little bit better in 2025.
Thank you for tuning into this podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and our deep dive into all things college football. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP for updates, insights, and more content. And make sure to visit our website at CrunchTimeSportsAdvantage.com for in-depth blogs, game previews, and information about our Crunch Time Express handicapping packages. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time for our next patient on the 2024 College Football Autopsy Report.